Hello, dear ones. This video is for people who have strong emotion in intimate relationships. And I'm going to be pretty candid in this one. I was married for 20 years. I married at 23. And I had some strong emotion in relationship, and so did my partner. But as happens with a lot of couples, they were the complete opposite type of reaction. So he was more avoidant. He had to get away from anything intense in conflict, so might go into another room or leave the house. And for me, being more insecurely attached when I was younger, I felt abandoned by that. And so it would only escalate my emotions. So we never really resolved that because we didn't understand it. I didn't take my part in it. We just didn't understand. And that's true of so many couples. So we swept it under the rug. So then I got divorced when I was 40, and then some years went by, I had more short-term relationships, and I got into another intimate relationship, and lo and behold, I'm seeing the same reaction. So this isn't something wrong with you. It's a phenomenon. It's born out of trauma. It's born out of seeing relationships that were modeled this way. But you can have a lot of compassion for yourself because this is a very real thing called complex trauma. So if we have complex trauma, there is a list of maybe 30 symptoms that go along with it. And some may apply, some might not apply. But when we get into relationship, it feels dangerous. If you think about it, possibly your caregivers were emotionally unavailable, or maybe they were very overwhelming, or maybe they modeled some dysfunctional ways of interacting. So if any of this was occurring for you, then we end up carrying it on. We end up repeating what we know. So if your partner can take some responsibility for their part, if the two of you start to take responsibility, it's not just about going into couples therapy, it's also about individuals in the relationship seeing their part, because inevitably both people are going to have very different ways of responding. So I know that in my current relationship, it really helped that this person committed to me and also didn't walk out. He might have been more of a freeze type. I'm not sure really. I know he's done his own work and I'm not going to analyze him. But I know that he was capable of staying with me when I would get a little bit intense. And that gave me the understanding that he wasn't going to leave, but it also enabled me to really see him. And because a lot of times when we go into these complex trauma states, we don't see the other person. They become an enemy or they become threatening. They're not threatening. They're our beloveds, right? But they become threatening to our subconscious, to our inner child, to the parts of us that haven't healed yet. So by him staying, I was able to really begin to see him and to feel with him and to understand, here's my beloved in front of me and I'm having this intense reaction. And it started to help me to take responsibility, but also, to go back to therapy and work on those parts that were coming up, because you can go a long time single and not be triggered whatsoever and think you're maybe enlightened. But then you get into relationship and you're like, what's happening? This isn't me. This isn't me. That's what it felt like. Well, of course it isn't me. The me, all of us have this wonderful true self, or in IFS terms, they call it self-energy. So we have this true self who's at the core of us, who knows, who is wise, and who is kind and loving and understanding and curious and full of wonder. So that part gets hijacked by these more primal regions of the brain that want to go into the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, those primal reactions that we go into when we don't see the other person in front of us. So as we feel safer in our relationships, which means the other person is taking their part too, and we both take our parts, then we can start to support each other in conflict to really stay present to the relationship and to communicate in a way that enables resolution rather than being stuck in these like river eddies circling round and around. We're able to work through something and, maybe even agree to disagree, but to come to some sort of resolution that feels good to both people so that you can be both contributing to the ecosystem of a relationship rather than draining the ecosystem. So that's a little bit about attachment and how our primal brain gets involved when we're in intimate relationship. The main thing here is to really have a lot of self-compassion and to take responsibility. So I know that when I work with couples, if the person who has the bigger reaction is taking responsibility, is doing their individual work, then their partner has more patience and also can start to see their part. When one person is really big in their reaction, the other person thinks, well, that person's really out of their mind. And so they don't necessarily take their part. But if both people are really realizing they contribute to that ecosystem and to the dynamic in conflict, then they can both be working towards healing. And the person with the more visible reaction can be taking that responsibility to do their individual work, to create harmony, and to create, if nothing else, there are going to be times in a relationship where you pull your hair out and you're going to be annoyed or frustrated, and that's going to happen in every relationship. But when it gets down to the real meat of it all, then you're going to be seeing some things change that make love come to the forefront rather than conflict and antagonism. So I hope this has been helpful. Take good care.